that Sister Cherise was going to give the program, I was thoroughly excited. The first woman to give a talk here. And second, I know her from, life. And she doesn't know this, but in our family, there's like a standing joke. You're not the joke, but we have 4 daughters, and athletics was a big part of our kids' lives, and we have 3 girls that played softball, and it'll come up to the granddaughters or about that game or this game or what they did, and Mackenzie will just sit there. She's our number 3 daughter. She never played softball, but what she says is, I love all these stories, but I'm the only one who has a state tournament medal, thanks to her, because she led us to the first state tournament for Hallettsville, if I'm not mistaken, and she did it with an incredible fastball that her dad, I'm sure, had bruises on his hands and on his knees.
Got a few bruises still.
There you go. And I remember her when she pitched. She was, I don't want to say stoic, because she almost always had a smile on her face while she was pitching. Except if an umpire did not give her a call, I will never forget the way you would cut the eyes at that umpire. And if you didn't scare him, you scared me. So, now those are great memories of those days, but some of my best memories of Cherise is that in Hallettsville, and I'm going to get in trouble for saying it, we kind of got a look around format. You know how it's rounded around the altar, so you can look around and see all the people instead of looking forward, because that's the way the format is. And I tend to look around a lot, and these are the memories that mean more to me than those pitching lessons. Those pitching times is when she had decided to discern, I guess that's the right word, her sisters also, and I would see her with her family, and they would be in church, and there was just a complete solemnness about her. Or when we would go to morning mass, and Cherise would be, Sister Cherise, I knew I was going to make that mistake, would be there on those morning masses, and man, it's like, and I appreciate this, there was a oneness with God when she's in mass. When she's sitting there, it's just, there's no looking around, there's no anything, it's her and God. And that's a great memory for me. So, thank you for allowing me the honor of introducing you. And if now we can warmly welcome Sister Cherise Klekar.
Thank you. I leaned over to my sister when you were coming up and I said, his wife cut my hair this morning. But yeah, it's really a joy for me to be here, so thank you for inviting me. As you can see, what I wanted to talk about today was just the influence that men have had on me in my life and getting me to where I am today. So I will talk about my dad some. I won't only talk about my dad. I promised him I wouldn't talk about him the whole time. But he is here, so for those of you who don't know him, that's my dad. And I just want to share a little bit from my own story and some snapshots in my story, and just men that were important for me, or what I learned through my relationship with them about God, about myself, and that have helped me and continue to help me in my journey. So as a premise, I certainly can't talk about all of the men that have had an impact on my life, and so I had to kind of make some selections. But I did want to say that those of you that do know me, and if you're wondering, did she think about me when she was preparing this? I did, and I wish I could say something to each one of you, because you deserve that. And even for those of you that are meeting just now and seeing me for the first time now, it's really moving and inspiring for me to see y'all here. And I remember when I first learned of this group, when Mark called me and told me about this group, I was very struck and just so proud also that something like this was happening in my part of the world. And so just thank you for that witness to the importance of your faith and discipleship together as men. So with that, I do want to start by sharing about how all of our stories are inserted into a history of stories. So we know that our lives have been influenced by people that we will never meet in this life, and that we will one day meet in the next. So I first wanted to start by sharing about this man. who is my dad's dad. This is my grandpa Klekar, who I never met in this life, but who I believe I've gotten to know through my dad and through my uncles, so his sons, and the ways that they lived that certainly were influenced by him. And so I share this because I think it's important to recognize how, again, the impact of the choices that we make or the way that we live our lives can last really for generations. And so some stories I really like about my grandpa, I haven't heard that many, but some of them, my dad has told me about just the time he would spend with them, so that they would throw the ball around in the backyard, or the fact that my dad would tell this story about how when they were driving through Moravia and they stopped at Moravia's store and his dad got him something to eat or drink, I don't remember which one it was, but that was really special for you. And I noticed how even just, the hours upon hours of how many hours that we threw the ball together around the backyard, or the times when just the other day when he met my sister halfway between here and College Station, I live in College Station, and Giddings, and he wanted to buy me something at the gas station, and I ended up not asking for anything, but just those little gestures that certainly he picked up from his own dad. And so recognizing again that influence of my grandpa, who tragically passed away when my dad was 10, so I never got to meet him, and yet his influence continued. And that's not even to speak of the fact that he took his family to church, that he was involved in his faith, and so giving that example. So again, just an invitation to the gratitude for all of the people that have come before us and that have led us to where we are and have created even the family that we were born into. But going from here, I can move on to my childhood, and I will start by talking a little bit about my dad. And I put on here two pictures, two of my favorite pictures, and because they highlight really well something that for me, and you can even ask my sisters, they hear me talk about this a lot, but a symbol or reality that I really like to talk about a lot is the gaze. And I realize that my life has been very influenced by the reality of the gaze and what a gaze can communicate. So I like these photos because they both show my dad not looking at the camera, but looking at me. And this is also, that's my brother too. So these were the two first men that I spent the majority of my time with when I entered into this world. But in particular, I love this photo. So this is me holding a potato. I'm about to turn 3, so this must have been a winter crop, at least according to the date on the photo. And so what I love about this photo is that I'm looking at what I think is probably my mom who's taking the photo, and I would say I'm looking at her, but I'm smiling so big that my eyes are really small, so I'm probably squinting, maybe I can't see. And I'm so excited about this potato that is huge for me because my hands are tiny, maybe a normal sized potato for someone else. But my favorite part is my dad, and the way he's looking at me, and he's smiling at me, and the way he's leaning on the pitchfork. So he was the one who got that potato out of the ground, and I just got to pick it up, right? I didn't have to do a whole lot of work. And so for me, this is really important because I recognize in this photo a reality that I lived a lot of my childhood, and I didn't really have words for it till later on. So for me, that gaze is communicating, you are good, you are loved, and you're worth my time. And what that has done for me, and you see this here, is created a space of freedom to just be who I am and be super excited about this potato, a sense of security, safety, so I can try new things. I can stick my hand in the dirt to go for that potato because my dad has already prepared the ground right for it. And so this has already kind of started from very little on, and so you see that something similar already here. This must have been one of my first days when they brought me home from the hospital. But just this reality of this gaze that is communicating to me that I am good, that I am loved, that I am worth his time. It will only be later on in life that I, in a moment of prayer, was able to recognize that this love that I received from my dad, that I still would say maybe just battled with my mom, the love of my mom, is like the most that I'm loved by anyone in this life. And yet in a moment of prayer, I was able to recognize how God the Father loves me even more than that, and how huge for me that moment of prayer was. That happened for me years later, really in college, that I had that experience. But again, this reality of being loved, being good, worth someone's time and having that space of freedom and security. And this has continued with me with the relationship with other men in my life who were also influenced by my grandpa Klekar, and that would be my dad's brothers. So these are my uncles. This is a picture from my consecration. And so these are my dad's brothers. These are, they lived next door to me all my life. A couple of them still do. And so I had the great privilege of growing up on the same land that my grandma grew up on and that my dad grew up on. And so it's been in the family for a few generations. And so I saw them daily. I remember I would come home and quickly change into my old clothes and run down to grandma's and see who I could find. I was running around outside. But they communicated to me a lot of similar things. So, like I said, I would often run down to grandma's after school, and I'd get home and look for one of my uncles, whoever I could find that was outside, and see what they're doing. Hey, what are you doing? And ask to do something with them. And I was so struck, again, later on, because for me it was very normal growing up, but thinking about it later on, how many times they stopped what they were doing to either play a game with me or to make something with me, to do an extra project for me because they were all carpenters and let's build something, let's create something, let me help you with something, which if any of you have had little kids help you do something, you know means like, let's extend the amount of time it's going to take you to do this and maybe give you something to correct later on when I'm gone. And yet they would say yes often to that, right? This desire to spend time with me, again, communicating to me, you are good, you are loved, you are worth my time. And I also, from them, and this from my dad as well, kind of the way that they interacted with me could communicate a lot to me about my ability or my age, what I could do. So I was the only girl. I have my older brother and an older cousin, and so I didn't get to do a lot of what I would consider the fun stuff too early on. So driving the tractor, getting to do certain things, it was like, oh, go slow, Cherise, they never said you're the girl, but it was kind of like, you're fragile, you're like delicate, so they were communicating that to me, which is good, like you're special, right? We want to protect you. But it would be later on in life, and this was even just last summer, I was home, and my uncle Pat, he has a quail farm, so he gets feed, and he asked me to unload the back of his truck with a 50-pound feed sacks, which is something he would never have let me done when I was younger, which was communicating to me something about myself, right? Who am I now? I'm a woman that I can help with, and communicating something about himself that he can ask me to help him with that now, right? It was maybe before, it was different, right? It was like, no, I should do this, and you can maybe kind of help me along, or you can move the truck closer for me, but I'll do the heavy lifting. And so just this reality of the way that our interaction would go that communicates to me who I am, that I am capable, or how I can help. But again, I am good, I am loved, I am worth their time. So another important aspect for me of just my relationship with men or seeing them is seeing their relationship with each other. So for me, it was always interesting seeing the relationship between my dad and his brothers, and just the way that they help each other and the way that they live, what I would think they got from my grandpa, which this hard work ethic. So my grandpa was a farmer, and then he moved into town to work in town as well later on in life to provide for the family. But just this constant, there's always something going on. They're always doing something, and whenever they finish a project, they're moving on to a new project. But how many times I've seen my dad get a phone call from Uncle Mike or Uncle Pat, I need to do this, we have square bales to haul, Uncle Pat needs to catch birds because he has a buyer coming, and so everyone just, whatever they're doing, they stop, they're going to organize their schedule to go help the other person, knowing that there's going to be another time when I can pick up the phone and call them as well. So this trading off positions of who's leading, who's helping the other, who's giving the instructions, who's directing, and just seeing this example of their ability to work together in this, or also the ability to just spend time together. How many times growing up that the evenings, at some point we all found each other and we were sitting on the porch together. My parents and my uncles maybe drinking a beer or something. I had Capri Sun, that was my drink. And we would sit there and we would just talk and we would just hang out. So that again, importance of time spent together. So seeing that in them, seeing the relationship between each other, and then just their presence in my life. So we mentioned a little bit of my sports background. So coming from a small town, I have the great privilege of playing just about all the sports that there are, at least the team sports. And so just the opportunity to go to sports games and see not only my parents or my uncles present, see a lot of my family members present. So again, that presence saying you're worth my time, saying that you're good and you're loved. So just this reality being communicated to me. But another person that I want to talk to you about, which is a person that we all know, and a person that we're all called to know in an ever deeper way every day, and the most influential man in our lives would be the God-man, Jesus Christ. So all of what I've said so far has been happening in a context of faith. So I grew up cradle Catholic, going to church, and so receiving that formation to pray, to be present in the sacraments. But it was really I'd say in high school that I started to develop a relationship with Jesus that was more personal, more intentional. And I was very involved in teen acts retreats, so that was definitely a help in just recognizing a lot of the men in that reality. The men, so the teen acts retreats, it's obviously a mix of guys and girls, but then there are adults and young adults that help coordinate. And so just recognizing that was kind of some of the first times that I was noticing men who were like extra involved in their faith, right? Not just Sunday mass goers, but present also for these types of events and helping these young people put on a retreat. And I remember being really struck by that and like recognizing faces and being like, oh, like people again from a small town. So someone that you see in their work context that you see also helping out for an event connected with the faith, and being very struck by that. Hearing testimonies and seeing people openly sharing about their own relationship with the Lord was very important for me and made me wonder if I had to say that, what would I say? Like how would I, so starting to really like ponder on what is my relationship with the Lord. And it was in that time that I received a grace. I really still consider it a grace because I don't know what else to call it, to desire to go to Mass every day. I don't know when I realized that daily Mass existed because, besides like holy days of obligation, I mostly went to Mass on either, Saturday evening or Sunday. And so at some point I realized that it existed and there was just this desire in me to go. And so I started to go, and I didn't think I was a morning person before that. I don't know, you can ask my dad. I'm pretty sure I was always the one rolling out of bed late, and I remember if I heard Dad coming to my room to have to get me, I could stay in bed a little bit longer. If Mom was coming to get me, I would get out. I was already up. So I don't know, again, a grace. Something switched to me because in Hallettsville, the only daily Mass is at 7 a.m. And so something switched in me, and I started going to this Mass. And it was there that a couple of things were happening. So one, I was really kind of just in awe, like, what is attracting me here? Who are you? That was kind of my question, like looking at Jesus and you go, like, who are you? Like, why am I getting up so early to come to Mass? And then I'm starting to see the people who are in Mass with me. So again, like, oh, that's a familiar face, or this person's dressed for work, he's about to go. Oh, that's my coach. Oh, that's a person that, and you start to notice people, and again, a lot of men present there on their own, come to Mass and then go for the rest of their day. But again, really struck. Also their intentionality with each other, the community there, people that would talk with each other after Mass, that they knew what was going on in the other person's lives, started to take an interest in me. I started to meet these people and they knew me. Undoubtedly were praying for my vocation, so thank you if you're one of those people. And so it was a very beautiful time in my life of just kind of starting to discover this reality of a personal relationship with Jesus. And this carries on into my college years, when I realize that daily Mass is great, and so it's good that I'm going, but as I start to kind of pray a little bit outside of Mass, it even more like changes everything and deepens. So I start to pray with the scripture that I hear at Mass in a very simple way. It was 10 minutes a day. That was enough for me at that time in my life. And just a simple prayer of reflection over the scriptures, and just really letting, especially the Gospels, kind of start to like actually ponder them and sometimes be baffled of like, Jesus, why did you say that, right? Or act in that way. What is that? That's, touching this in me. And I noticed that my life was changing. Like things couldn't stay the same as I was encountering Jesus in a more authentic way. That I was needing to live by what I was what I was encountering. And it was really beautiful too, because I was encountering Jesus as a real person. And so no longer just as someone that I know about, but as someone that I can know. And one really beautiful moment happened for me in a moment of adoration. It wasn't at this time, but I do like this photo. That is me. But it was during Eucharistic adoration. I went to Texas A&M, so it was at St. Mary's Catholic Center. And I was just praying there before the Lord, and been praying about a lot of different things, but one of them was kind of just about who I am before the Lord, to kind of have an idea of a direction. Where should I go with my life? And there was just a very simple moment towards the end of my holy hour where I really felt convicted that the Lord was saying to me, Cherise, before all else, you are loved. And kind of this returning of this reality of being under a gaze and being told you are good, you are loved, you're worth my time, I'm here to be with you, it's good that you're here. And so this being drawn in again, and this question returns to me, who are you? Who are you, this God who loves me so much? And then a new question, who am I? How am I called to respond to this kind of love? So as all of this is happening in me, I do realize that, and I saw that my dad and my mom were growing a lot in their faith too. And that also had a big impact on me. So I don't know if you remember this, but we went to Italy. You definitely remember that. So we went to Italy. We stayed in Italy for 10 days. And one of the places that we went, though, was in Florence. And we stayed in this kind of like old monastery that was turned into a hotel. And they had Bibles in like the hotel rooms. And I guess they knew tourists were going to stay there, so they had English ones. And I just remember one evening that my dad was kind of just like flipping through one of the Gospels and like reading it. And I remember just the way that you like would like look up and you would like quote something, and we're just very like allowing yourself to be touched in a new way by the word, and just like, whoa, like I never noticed this. Like just reading, not just hearing kind of the word fragmented, and so you hear the passage that is presented at Mass, but kind of just reading through and noticing the sequence of events and recognizing like, oh wow, like this is something interesting that's happening here. And I remember being very struck by your openness to find something new in that word, and to be like humble enough to say like, oh, I don't remember this passage. You know, we've all heard all of the Gospels by now, but yet the word is always alive and it encounters us in a new way. And I saw that in my dad, and that was very inspiring for me. And another inspiring example for me was one of my uncles, my Uncle Pat, who, he doesn't know I'm going to say this, but so when I was growing up, I don't remember ever seeing him go to Mass. And, but one year, I think it was when I was in college, at a certain point, he kind of started talking to me a little bit about faith. Certainly he saw my involvement a lot in the faith. He probably saw my dad's more. I know the place where he was working at, he was kind of meeting men who were involved in their faith more. And at a certain point, he started going back to Mass. And I just remember being so struck by that. Again, this ability for someone to recognize that something was missing in their life. I've never really talked to them about it, so I don't know exactly how that went. But just to be able to change. And I think, I don't know, only you can say this because I'm a woman, but I think for men it can be hard sometimes to change maybe a pattern that you've had, or to have to be humble enough to say like, maybe I was wrong not going, and I'm going back now. And in a small town, people notice, so I don't know, you know. So that can be hard, but I remember just being very struck by him, again, himself, allowing himself to be encountered in a way that he couldn't not respond, right? Like, and again, I'm speaking from what I see from outside, so I don't want to misinterpret it, but it really struck me a lot. And so those two examples of just helping me to continue to be open with a wonder at how the Lord can encounter me in a new way, and how I can be transformed by the Lord continually, always drawn deeper. So far I've mentioned a little bit about this gaze that's communicating my goodness, of being lovable and worthy of someone's time. and how this is a reflection of God's loving gaze upon me, and how it has given me a space of freedom and security to just be myself, as well as to be encouraged to allow the Lord to encounter me and allow me to encounter Him in a way that is transformative in my life. So I want to share just a quick, another story from my years in formation. So I lived in Rome, Italy for 6 years. And so my community, the Apostles of the Interior Life, our formation is done in Italy. And so I was studying philosophy and theology there in Italian. So my first 2 years in Italy, I was living the dream. I really was, my adventurer side was just loving it and not expecting to, coming from, I loved growing up here. And so I didn't want to live in a Texan city, much less a city outside of the United States. And yet the grace was flowing. This is where the Lord was inviting me to be, and it was beautiful. And I was finding a rhythm, and I was making friends at this university, and I was loving it. And what I consider my first hard obedience was asked of me, and for very valid motivations, the community asked me to change universities. And it was really hard for me, and just the thought of it, and I finally got plugged in this place, and met these people, and I have this network, and I enjoy going, I look forward to it, and now I have to go and start over at a new place that we've never studied at, so I'm going to have to explain who we are, and all these things. And it was really hard for me to do that, and I recognized that I spent just about a whole semester really suffering. It took me a while to just accept that I was suffering, because I thought I was silly. I shouldn't suffer for this. But it was touching something in me, something deep in me, and the Lord was inviting me to go there with Him. And again, with this experience of this freedom and security to be myself under a gaze that says you are good and you are loved and you are worth my time, I was able to go to places of intimacy with the Lord that I hadn't experienced before then, and just cry in the chapel, or just say, I don't know why, but I'm really sad about this, and just be sad with Him and not have to have any explanation or draw a conclusion from it or know my action item after that. I was just I'm just here with you and like this. And that semester really brought me to a space of being able to say, yeah, I'm called to belong only to you. So I don't belong to that university. I was really attached to the idea that I could say I went to the university where my founder went, because our founder studied at that first university I was at, right? Or I don't belong to that group of friends, but I belong to you, Jesus. And if you're here right now for me, then yeah, I want to be here too with you. That was what was kind of working in my heart. In this place so the place that I went to, and I smile now because I just see that the Lord gave me a huge gift by asking me to go there. But this is just a few of my classmates, and this is at the diaconate ordination, the transitional diaconate ordination of some of them. And the ratio, the guy to girl ratio in my class is pretty similar to the one that's going on right now. So I was the only girl. I was the only girl in my class. And it was great. I loved it. It was so good. God had prepared me for that my whole life, right? But it was beautiful. I was learning so much from them. So most of my classmates, I think one of them was a layperson. They were almost all seminarians and were part of religious communities. So they really lived fraternity in a strong way, brotherhood. So I was very struck by seeing a masculine way of loving each other. So, punching each other and teasing each other and making fun of each other. But you could just tell that they really felt comfortable together, and they did really care about each other. They celebrated and rejoiced with each other. With the victory of one person was everyone's victory. They really stayed close to those we had a couple of our classmates who lost family members in the time that we were studying, and as you can tell, it was a very multicultural situation. So I'm the only North American here. We have Africans, Philippines, South America, Central America, Europe, so just a conglomerate of cultures. And just to see them draw together in that experience as well. But also something really striking. So I was treated very well in that class. They were very respectful and very sweet. But I remember one day in particular when I was running late. I made it to class before it started, and everyone was already at their desks and ready to take their notes or whatever, looking down at their paper. It was early, so I guess people were kind of quiet for that. But I remember walking in and just everyone looking up and smiling, and just hearing this litany of buongiorno, Cherise, ciao, Cherise, good morning, Cherise, hi, Cherise, and just this like, and then they look back into their paper, and I just remember thinking like, wow, like they see me, you know, they like notice me walk in, they say hi to me by my name, then they go back to what they're doing. Like it's normal. And so just this again, reality of like, you look good, you are loved, you're worth our time, you're worth me lifting up my head to see you and to say hi to you, right? Or talk to you during the break time. So again, just this communication from the male gaze of who I am and my worth, but also the example of their own community, the way that they lift each other up. I would also see them often praying in the chapel, on their own, between classes, and so just this gift of their presence, and again, seeing how the Lord gave that to me through this hard decision that was made. And it was something that did, I would say, impact a lot my kind of last leg of formation for consecration. So this reality of being drawn into like a belonging that's exclusive to Christ. So as a consecrated woman, like I am Christ's. And so right now I live with Sister Lella, but I won't always live with her necessarily or with my other sisters. That's not what's core to my identity. That I live with other of my sisters, yes, because we're a community, but it could be any of them. But what's important is that I'm always in union with Christ. And so that being solidified more brought me to the day of my consecration. And this is a picture of me and my parents as we're processing down the aisle at St. Mary's Catholic Center in what is now considered the old church because we have a new church built. And this was in December of 2019, so we're coming up on my 4th anniversary. And I love this picture too because I love like the emotion that's captured in it, and I feel like it's really telling of just how I experienced my parents being very proud of me, which was really important for me. So I remember at a certain point thinking, again, we're from a small town, so people are going to know. I'm like, I hope my parents want to talk about what I do with people, or like if they ask them about it, they're like happy to talk about it, or just like that natural desire of a child to have their parents support them and be happy with what they're doing and want to talk to people about it. And so just this for me is just a reminder of that reality, and I know that's true. I know that my dad talks about me all the time. So sorry if some of you are like, oh my gosh, here he goes again. But I'm very flattered. And so yeah, I just love this picture, and again, just continuing that reality of the case. And so today I work in campus ministry at Texas A&M, so mostly there. So we live in College Station, and I'm on some of the sisters who are assigned to St. Mary's Catholic Center, so we serve the students of Glenn and Texas A&M. And so it's at this Catholic Center. And I get to work with men, laymen, married men, priests who are dedicated to this campus ministry. But I also get to see the example of male students. So I'm really struck by the male students that we have around us. I recognize that I'm in contact mostly with the ones who like come willingly to the center. We do a little bit of evangelization on campus, but much of my time is in a place where people are coming. And so I'm seeing obviously the people who are more involved in their faith. But just really struck, Father Michael, you'll appreciate this. We have a roster of about 80 altar servers on rotation, and they have to cap the amount of servers you can have for a daily mass. So sometimes we have 6 guys serving at a daily mass, which means some of them are just walking around like this because you don't need them. But it's beautiful, right? Like, whoa, all of these guys that want to serve mass, they have to like wait to be able to serve, because there's someone else ahead of them because it's such a long list. Or seeing just men who are praying in the chapel, seeing them build each other up and like invite each other to prayer as kind of this liturgy of the hours group, and they're like, night prayer, 5 minutes, come on, and then all these men like go running off after it. And so it's like really beautiful to see again the kind of masculine style, but just this reality of community and friendship, but also really diving into their faith. And that gives me a lot of hope because there are many studies, I don't have the exact numbers for you, but that show, even just in the Christian reality, so Catholic reality, but also other Christian denominations, that children who decide to continue to practice their faith as adults, one of the main factors of this is that they saw their dad practice their faith, or like a male figure in their life practice their faith. So for me, that gives a lot of hope to just see young men doing that and building that foundation. So as I come to a close, before we enter into a question and answer or discussion time, I just want to kind of just recognize how, again, I started talking about this gaze and this communication of you are good, you are loved, you are worth my time. And how I recognized at a certain point that that gaze that I was receiving from important male figures in my life was just a reflection of the way that God the Father looks at me. But in an even more recent moment of prayer, I was actually praying with that one of those first pictures I showed you, the one where my dad's looking at me and holding a potato. Because for me, again, that symbolizes a lot this gaze of the Father, so I do like to kind of pray with that photo. And in that prayer time, I recognized how, so God was, again, renewing this reality of, yes, I love you in a more powerful and deeper way, like that. But also, I love your dad like that. And so then just, again, this reality, so like wanting to bring home this reality for you and be a channel vessel for God saying to you tonight, you are good, you are loved, and you are worth His time. And so thank you for being here and for allowing Him to encounter you in a new way and opening yourself to that. And I'm sure each of you have people who are entrusted to you in some way, whether it be a child or a grandchild or a student or an employee or a younger sibling, someone who looks up to you, someone who you want to influence in a positive way. And my encouragement for you is that the best way to help them grow in their faith is first to deepen and grow in your own. So by living out authentically your own faith and just encountering God, you're naturally going to be overflowing that to them. And they're going to see that in you. And so not to underestimate the impact of that choice to pray today and then tomorrow to pray tomorrow. That choice is that impact for generations to come. So I left you, we have a handout, and there's some takeaways. I think they're takeaways from what I say. And then on the back, I left for you kind of like an encouragement and a challenge. So one is an encouragement if you don't already have a daily prayer life to start one, or if you do have one but you're feeling called to deepen it. I left you 2 kind of prayer methods that we often teach. So in our apostolate, our mission, we help people walking within in their interior life, so apostles of the interior life. So we do a lot of teaching on prayer. And so these are a couple of methods that have had very big impacts on me. So the first method there, the 4R method, is the one that I kind of was alluding to when I was talking about starting to pray 10 minutes a day. And then the second one is more of a relational prayer and just kind of how to bring to the Lord what's moving in your heart, what thoughts you have. So you can try walking through some of those and kind of the challenge to try to get that daily prayer life going. And then the second one is kind of more of an encouragement to help experience that encounter, that wonder of a God that we can kind of risk to think that we already know, but to allow ourselves to get to know Him in a new way, but then also foster community amongst you. So the invitation would be to, in one sitting, it's possible, it seems not possible, but it is possible, read through a gospel. I would suggest Mark, it's the shortest. But to read through without necessarily going you can stop and meditate on it if you want, but just allow yourself to just kind of notice what's striking me, what's interesting. Maybe I've read these passages, but to see them in a row, and be kind of aware of those movements. And my suggestion would be to find a partner and decide that you are both going to do it, and then meet up afterwards and share about how it went. And so again, it's just fostering community, but also giving yourself an opportunity to encounter the Lord in a new way, and to be encountered in a new way. So these are a couple of suggestions that I have, invitations, just going off of what I have to share with you this evening. But again, just thank you for inviting me, for listening to me, and being very encouraging. Thank you for looking at me while I was talking. I felt very encouraged. I appreciate that. And know that I'm praying for you, and again, very inspired by just seeing you here tonight, and thank you for having a group like this in this area, because it's, again, for me, very promising and beautiful, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're the first woman we've had speaking. You're very much up to the challenge. open to any questions or?
Yeah, I'm open to questions. My sister here, Rafaela, is also open to questions. She had the blessing, like me, to grow up with many beautiful examples of men in her life too. So we're happy to ask or answer questions about that or things you can direct it at one of us particularly or just in
First, I just want to commend your dad. He was a good little boy in high school. When I started teaching at Alpha High in 1981, I was the National Honor Society sponsor, and he was in the National Honor Society. He was a good boy. But I was just curious how you came about choosing the order that you're in, and a little, what type of order is this? What kind of charisma do y'all have? And
Yeah.
share that with us.
Yeah. How about I can share how I met y'all, and then maybe you want to. So again, our community's name is the Apostles of the Interior Life. And so I met our community as a freshman at Texas A&M. So we have a house there, and we've had a house there since 2008. And so my kind of connection with community, and Sister Rafaela was actually one of the first that I met. And she could speak more
I've got
into
a story
this.
about that.
I'll let her tell that. But basically, for me, it was a noticing of first a human attraction. So later on, I was able to be more honest with myself about it, but I was just spending a lot of time with them and was very curious and just like, who are these women? They were all Italian, the ones that were there at first. Our community was first founded in Italy. And so I was very intrigued, and to this reality of consecrated life, like what does that mean? Like to see them praying, but they also know a lot about the faith, and they're able to talk about it, and they're walking with the students. I was meeting with one of them one-on-one, and so growing in my prayer life, and so this desire was building in me as I was also experiencing the Lord in the ways that I was sharing here. So this like reality of intimacy with the Lord and being drawn in to this belonging with Him. And I saw in our sisters in a special way that they were, the mission that they were living was just really connecting with what I felt not necessarily adequate to do, but that I desired for other people. So the mission of helping people encounter the Lord was what I desired other people to do, because as I was encountering Him, I was like, no one can not know about this, right? So that was kind of my just like getting to meet them, see them daily. I was very fortunate they were just there, so I got to spend a lot of time with them. Saturday was the saddest day because it was like the one day where I didn't really see them as much. And so just getting to spend time with them and like noticing, wow, I'm really just like attracted to them. I want to spend time with them. And then of course when I started actually discerning or entering into formation, you live the life and you can tell like, is this resonating with who I am? Are these challenges helping me to grow? Or, we like to use the image of a flower, am I blooming or am I wiltering? And so I kept seeing that I was continuing to blossom into the person I felt the Lord was calling me to be, and so that confirmed more and more. But if you want to speak a little bit more into the charisma.
Yeah, first fun story about Cherise. So the freshman, she was a freshman, and we had a freshman gathering where the incoming freshmen would come and be welcome at St. Mary's. Probably 300-400 freshmen at the time. And we had divided up St. Mary's in different stations. So they would walk around in groups of 30, just go to the chapel, go to this place, go here and there. And different staff members would be staffing the different stations, just to explain to them, on a rotation level, what we were doing. And most of the freshmen, men and women alike, would come in very shy, minding their own business until time came when we would speak to them and do a little presentation. And so this went on several times during the day until I'm imagine that I'm in the corner, so this is the room, and all these freshmen are coming in, kind of shy, and then this young woman shows up, comes up. Hi, sister. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Cherise. Who are you? So I go home that night, and I tell the sisters that I live with, I said, you won't believe what happened today. All those 400 kids, there was this young woman that came up, and one of the sisters finished the sentence and introduced herself, saying that she was Cherise. I'm like, yeah. She was like, me too. So we were all surprised, and it's so funny because she says, I don't remember that, and it's not me. I'm like, no, it is you. And tonight's talk confirms to me what she was saying about growing up with a sense of security, feeling safe and secure. I mean, you don't do that if you don't feel secure. So I was very, very struck by that. Anyway, so that's just a little story to introduce little Cherise from the perspective of one of the sisters that saw her coming into college. But kind of to answer your question, so the name of the community, Apostles of the Interior Life. So apostles means to be sent of the interior life. So there is this constant movement that we try to live of encountering the Lord in our own interior life and then going out to talk to others about it. And then once we've talked to others about the Lord, then we go back to the Lord to talk to Him about what we just heard from people. And then in prayer, we hear what the Lord has in store for them, and then we go back out. And so I feel that I'm a ferry boat. I keep going back and forth, right, between the Lord and people. So that's very much what we do on a daily basis. And we do a lot of that through the one-on-ones. So we do a lot of spiritual direction, spiritual accompaniment, where we just sit down with men and women alike and we can just receive what people have and what they experience, the struggles, the joys, the doubts, and then bring them to the Lord, and vice versa. So this goes on a daily basis. And I personally, as you say, I grew up with 3 older brothers, and I'm still a functioning adult despite that. And I always joke about that because my brothers were, she's met them, they're very unique. I love them to pieces, but there was a lot of bantering, a lot of going back and forth and teasing each other. But I wouldn't be the woman that I am today had it not been for my family, my older brothers. But one thing that I did notice, and that I continue to notice, even in spiritual direction, is to see the way the Lord interacts with women and the way the Lord interacts with men. Just you read the gospel. Anytime the Lord has to talk to a woman, He just sits down, looks at her. The Samaritan woman, He takes forever to talk to her, and the adulterous woman. I mean, he's going to Martha and Mary's house, just sits down and, eats a meal. With guys, He goes like, Zacchaeus, come down from the tree, you drop your nets, let's go, let's get going. That's just how the Lord relates to men and He relates to women. And so, this is how we're trained to do spiritual direction with men and women alike, because, they're just different. So we relate to men and to women in a different way, but to both gender, we bring the importance of relating to the Lord as their Father and Maker. So concretely, our community, she was saying, we were founded in Italy by our founder, who is a priest. He's going to turn 97 years old next week. He's still alive and kicking. Unfortunately, he's still driving. That's a problem. Now, talk about convincing a man that it's not a good idea to drive when he's 97. But he's hard of hearing, but he doesn't admit to that either. But he had a very, I think a very insightful, I would say almost prophetic vision when he was in the seminary during the war. So he was born in 26. So during the Second World War, he was in the seminary being trained. And already then, and he's one of 11, 2 boys and 9 girls. So he knew women's psychology very, very well. And yes, and then the priests were, 70% probably of your, congregation is women. But back already in the 40s, he had a dream. And he thought, I dream to found a community of conservative women that will help the priests in their apostolate. Not to be priests, none of us wants to be a priest, but to help the priests reach people through the feminine genius. He said, because women have some characteristics that we as men don't have. Women are very nurturing, they're very intuitive, he would say. And so if we can train women to study like men, do like priests, so that's why we study philosophy and theology, exactly with seminarians, and I always joke, they become priests, we become old. So it is. And so he had that vision, but mind you, this is before Vatican II. He would share this vision with his friends, seminarians, and they would think he was nuts. It was like, what are you talking about? Women studying philosophy and theology, women preaching, doing spiritual direction. At the time, consequently, women were either teaching or doing nursing, or at the most helping with practical things, priests, in the house, in the rectory, or teaching women, how to sew and these things, but never to take that, preaching level, if you will. But he had that intuition back in the 40s, but it wasn't until later on, in the 80s, when he started gathering some women, and this is how our community was founded. Something also unique that he decided, and it's actually in our Constitution. He said, because of the formation that you have received, all of us sisters, we could teach philosophy or theology, we could teach in schools, we could, even some of us maybe teach in colleges. He says, but I don't want you to have to rely on a job security. I want you to give your life completely to the Lord, and He will take care of you. And he would quote Matthew 6, when Jesus says, do not worry about what you will eat and what you will wear. Your Heavenly Father knows all these things. Seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be given you besides. So he would tell us, just trust God's providence. And so to this day, in our constitutions, it says that the apostles of the interior life cannot have a paid job, but only live on donations. And I've been in community for 27 years, and I can tell you that not once we've been walked in. And as men, you're providers. I see you, when my dad found that out, I was like, so usually dads, go like, so who's paying the bills? Rightly so, because men you guys are wired to provide. And Father Salvatore was as well, and he said, I'm not throwing you under the bus, but I'm telling you to trust what the Lord has in mind. And so the Lord has been providing for us all of these years. Because, again, Jesus is our spouse, and He knows what we need. And everything that we've been needing has been provided. So that's something particular about our community. So everything we wear is what women don't wear anymore. So they do their spring cleaning of their closets, and that's one of the reasons also why we don't wear my habits.
No used habits, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry?
No used
No used habits. No one has nun's habits in their closet, right? That away. So yeah, that's something a little bit about our community. And if you've been wondering where my accent is from, I wasn't born in Texas. I was raised in Oregon. I'm just kidding. I was raised in Italy. I'm from London.
How many are in your order?
So there is right now 18 of us with vows, and one is about to take her promises on December 8th for the first time, and then we have 3 women in formation and 2 young women that are discerned in our community right now at College Station. So our community is tiny. It's very small, like 18. And when people go like, you mean 1800? No. 18, and 6 of us are in College Station. So that means that the rest is back in Italy. So again, 18 plus 4 information, but that's a number for a very small, very tiny community.
What do y'all think of the new church?
Oh, in St. Mary, it's beautiful.
Okay.
Y'all should come see it.
It's fabulous,
Yes.
phenomenal.
Mm-hmm. And we're already running out of space on Sundays. It holds 1,644 people. I keep reading that sign. And they keep adding chairs in the back with the narthex. Almost we already need a new church.
Well, you look prettier when you get a tour by Cherise.
Yes.
It's gorgeous, yeah. Come on up, we'll be happy to give you a tour.
What does a week look like for you?
The week. So I'll just give like an average day and then multiply that by like 5. So for me, that's working in campus ministry. So we have community prayer together. So in the morning at 7:40, we come together for Liturgy of the Hours, so morning prayer in office. And then we moved to St. Mary's so that we can pray together with the students. We do a holy hour in Adoration Chapel where the students are praying as well. Then we have a few hours where we can organize on our own. So a lot of times I have a lot of spiritual direction appointments then, or maybe I'm working on a talk that I'm been asked to give. And then we come back together for the meals. So for lunch, we're back together at the house. We take turns with the chores, so someone has to cook that day or do dishes after. So we have a chore chart on the fridge. And then in the afternoon, we have time again for more appointments or working on talks or things that you might have, or administrative things that we have to do. And then we come back together typically for the 5:30 Mass at St. Mary's. And then we have some personal prayer to fit in some of those places as well. So a half hour of meditation, potentially with one of the methods that I gave y'all there with scripture. And then the rosary, we pray that each day as well. And 20 minutes of spiritual reading, so the life of a saint or some sort of spiritual book. And then we come back together for Vespers at 7:45. We're in Italian community, so we eat at 8 p.m. And we also have time if someone would want to take a nap in the afternoon, they can. We have then an hour of recreation after supper, so the community time again. So we'll play a game together, or we'll just spend time together sharing. And then night prayer closes the day at 10, and then we go to bed. So yeah. And then the weekends are a little bit more, just depending on what's going on. But yeah.
Before we go, we brought some prayer cards, so we are serious when we say that we can use your prayers. So we can have some of them go around, so feel free to take one. And then here instead is let us stay connected. There's our address, so we'd love to hear from you. And we're about to send out our Christmas newsletter, so if you would like to stay in touch and see more about what we do, just take one of these and we can just...
Actually, that's a good segue into what I wanted to show you guys just before we